Jonathan Lee Riches investigates. Where is Bryan Kohberger's alibi? I titled this video Alibi and Lies because Bryan Kohberger's defense has yet to produce an alibi to the prosecution. The prosecution in this case, this Moscow case, has asked the defense under Idaho court rule to produce an alibi. He filed a motion, William Thompson, a few weeks ago, asking or demanding, more or less, the defense produce an alibi for Bryan Kohberger. Further, the state hereby demands of the defendant notice of defense of alibi pursuant to Idaho Code 19-519 and Idaho Criminal Rule 12.1, dated William Thompson, prosecutor, May 23rd, 2023. Produce an alibi, Bryan Kohberger. That's what William Thompson is demanding. So it's been weeks later, and Ann Taylor just filed a motion in this case saying that she wants an exception and or an extension of time for Bryan Kohberger to produce an alibi. Mr. Kohberger has filed a contemporaneous motion for an exception, or in the alternative, an extension of time for notice of alibi, dated June 9th, 2023, Ann Taylor. So they want an exception, or in the alternative, an extension of time for notice of alibi. They don't want to produce it right now, or don't want to even produce it at all. Why? Why? Produce an alibi. Produce an alibi, Bryan Kohberger's defense. Why haven't you produced an alibi like the prosecution demanded? Which is a court rule in Idaho, by the way. So this is Idaho Code 19-519, Notice of Defense of Alibi. This is dealing with alibis. At any time after arraignment before a magistrate, upon a complaint and upon written demand of the prosecuting attorney, the defendant shall serve within 10 days or at such different time as the court may direct upon the prosecuting attorney a written notice of his intentions to offer a defense of alibi. Such notice by the defendant shall state the specific place or places at which the defendant claims to have been at the time of the alleged offense, and the names and addresses of the witnesses upon who he intends to rely to establish such alibi. So there you go. Bryan Kohberger's defense was told to produce alibi, and now they've filed either an extension or an exemption or an extension of time to produce it. They don't want to produce it to the prosecutor. Why? Why? Kohberger's defense must produce an alibi, but they're not. What are they trying to hide? Where was Bryan Kohberger that fatal day, November 13th, 2022, from midnight all the way to 6 a.m.? Where was he? Can he prove his whereabouts? And why is Ann Taylor stalling on giving the prosecution that alibi? What's he have to hide? Where was he? Who was he with? Or he can't produce an alibi because he knows where he was, at that Moscow, Idaho home. Looking at this case more and more and the actions of the defendant, it makes me think, what's going on here? I mean, guilt all the way. Guilt all the way. You can't even produce an alibi. Now you want to try to stop yourself. You try to file a exemption, or you try to ask for an extension to produce that. Well, what do you need an extension for? If your client was innocent, you would have produced the alibi right from the rip. That would be the very first thing a defense would do, right? Produce the alibi. My client was not there. This is where he was right away. Adamant about it. But she's stalling. Yet she's ready for trial, October 2nd. And we're talking about Ann Taylor representing Bryan Kohberger. I don't know, people. Makes me think Bryan Kohberger is guilty. Subscribe to my channel, like, hit the notification button. I want to know your thoughts on that. Why isn't Bryan Kohberger's defense producing that alibi that the prosecution wants? And they can get under Idaho court rules. We'll talk soon. Stay tuned.